I watched the Barbara Walters interview from 2007, and that introduced the world to jazz. I believe she was only 7 years old.
Yes.
Tell us about that experience. Barbara Walters, and to our viewers, we're going to show you a link of how to do it. If you are not familiar with Barbara Walters' interview with Jazz Jennings, it's something you must watch. 2007. Tell us about what that experience was like.
And she was actually 6 at the time.
6 years old. Wow.
It aired in 2007. And she was a natural with the camera. She wasn't nervous. And she would call Barbara Walters her friend. And they got to know each other pretty well, where she felt comfortable enough to actually sing to Barbara. And it was a great experience for us all. And it really catapulted her into a different situation where she was the face of trans youth that had not been seen, like so little, maybe older, but it changed our lives forever. And I think it put her on a trajectory where she is the person she is today.
That's super interesting to me. So 2007, I agree with you. Barbara Walters and that interview focused light on something that I think most Americans had not seen before, even in the LGBTQ community, trans youth. How did it change your life? How did it change Jazz's life?
It changed my life in the sense that I felt that we needed to do more. And I didn't want Jazz to be the one doing it because I just wanted her to have, typical childhood. But at that time, we started a foundation to help other families. And it really opened up the door for people to come out and say, you know what, my daughter or son is like this too. And I want to share and I want to understand that I don't feel like I'm alone anymore. And Jazz kind of went on her light, as a little kid. And then as she became older, she did more advocacy and more television and became, more of a spokesperson, still at a very young age, though.
Yeah. You help guide your child through the navigation of this process. So many parents are going to watch this interview that are parents of trans children or think that they're a parent of trans children. Starting from that Barbara Walters interview when Jazz was 6, any immediate recommendations of early on in these early developmental years? Anything from your seat that you learned in Barbara Walters over like the next decade after that you would say to parents?
I would say to parents, it's really important to get professional help. If we didn't have professionals guiding us, I wouldn't be sitting with you here today. And you really need that affirmation from somebody who knows about trans kids and have met other trans kids. So I feel that you can't go by what I say or somebody else. You need to go by what your doctor will say is the best for your child. And if a doctor knows trans youth, they'll say follow their lead. Listen to them. If they're persistent, consistent, and insistent, a lot of times they are transgender, but don't go by what you read or see on TV. You really need to have your own story. Jazz has her own story and her own journey, and everybody's different.
Over the course of the decade from that Barbara Walters interview, Jazz writes a book in 2016, which I'm reading right now, by the way, Being Jazz, My Life as a Transgender Teen. A lot changed from 2007 to 2016 when that book came. While there was not overwhelming acceptance, there was also not overwhelming rejection. It seems to me my memory, in the middle of the Obama administration, might have been, there might have been some negatives, but nothing like what we see today. Was that your experience when Jazz wrote that book in 2016, that it wasn't the kind of thing that we're seeing today, or is that your memory?
What I remember was really her first book, and it was called I Am Jazz in 2014.
Okay.
And that really ruffled feathers. This was a picture book for children that said the word transgender. It's like, oh my goodness. So that really was taken very well by people. And then a lot of people had a problem with it, and it started to be banned way before all this book banning that's occurring now. And then when her second book came out, the one you just mentioned, there wasn't as much fanfare about it because it was talking about, she was talking about her life as a pre-teenager and then into teenagehood. That one, even today, doesn't get banned the same way as the children's book does, which is interesting.
And why do you think that being able to look back in those two footprint dates of 14 and 2016 and the difference in the books, why do you think that reaction happened?
I think that they focus more on the I Am Jazz book because it's geared towards 4 to 8 year olds. And what 4 to 8 year olds should be talking about transgender? And I think it's sexual. Like, we don't talk about sex in kindergarten, but it's not sex. It's gender. And that's where people
Jeanette,
have a problem.
I've heard this said, and we've discussed it in LGBT so many times. Help us understand the difference that you're identifying here, that gender is not sexuality, sexuality is not gender. Help us understand.
Sure. Sexual orientation has to do with who you're attracted to, who you want to go to bed with at night, who you love, where gender identity is who you identify as. This is who I am. It has nothing to do with who I want to have sex with. It's who I am as a person, and who in my heart I know I am. So that is two very different things. And the world that doesn't know anything about transgender people and have a problem with the book obviously has never met a trans person or know what the book is talking about, because it's nothing to do with sex whatsoever. She was, 4, 5, 6 years old. They were explaining what her life was like back then.
Do you think we're making progress in helping people understand the difference in the two, or it's getting worse in terms of our understanding?
I thought we were really doing well with progress, where people were asking more questions and understanding and realizing that transgender people exist, and more people had met a transgender person. And now there's just this wave of hate coming from all over our country. It's sort of like the politicians figured out that trans people exist. And now that they know, they're like, and we don't like what they're doing. Yes, they do exist, but we don't like anything about them.